Doireann Garrihy, thank you for joining me on the Mindful Podcast.
Dermot Whelan, it's an absolute pleasure to be a guest on your podcast.
You're an old pro at this stage. Although I thought you'd been doing podcasts for like 10 years. And it's only when I was listening to a recent one of yours, you mentioned it was
2019.
19?
Yeah.
Which is, just was only last week.
Sure, look. We just had an old pandemic in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
Which we won't talk about. But yeah, I came up with the idea in 2018. And yeah, the first episode was March 2019. It feels like it's been longer than 4 years. God, yeah, coming up on 5 years now. But it's been a joy, a pleasure, a real passion project of mine. And it was just a format I came up with. And it's weird. I really haven't changed it from the get-go. Like you would think you kind of would finesse it. And I definitely have in ways. But, you know, for the most part, it's kind of the same as it was at the start.
But it's not too restrictive. Laughs of your life, if anybody doesn't know. But of course you all do know. It obviously has a structure, but it allows you to go lots of different places. So the listener doesn't feel locked into something, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
it's not like, okay, here we go, ketchup or brown sauce. It's not like that.
Yeah, no, it's not. It was heavily inspired by Desert Island Discs. And I mean, when you think of when I think of interviews I've listened to from Desert Island Discs, I never necessarily remember the guests' songs they've chosen, but I definitely remember their stories. And so it's the same with the Laughs of Your Life. It's, kind of bookmarked by, questions to do with laughter, feeling laughed at, no laughing matter moments, first memories of laughter. But within that, of course, it leads off in different directions and you find out other things about people.
I've actually started recently listening to Radio 4, BBC Radio 4, which is the home of Desert Island Discs. And I realised as I was making a cup of tea, I was like, oh my God, I'm one of those people who leaves on low volume Radio 4 all day long.
All day. And
there's something about the accents on it that's just so wonderfully background comforting.
Yes.
It's like having, a nice Christmas tree lights on or something. It gives you a sense of glow and it's all... Yeah. And now we meet a man who is investigating butter in Devonshire. And you're like, I'm in. I'm in for the next 20.
This is literally the perfect thing for me to listen to right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, that just reminds me. Do you know what I always think about? And I'm sorry to digress now, but just when you did that accent, I always laugh at you doing the Sky newsreader voice.
Oh, that was like one of my first ever pieces of stand-up comedy.
Was it?
Yeah.
Is it newsreader? No, it's reporter.
It was Sky News, because I remember when we got Sky, it was all tremendously exciting, and the idea of rolling 24-hour news. And I had never heard these kinds of reporters' voices or accents before.
Yeah.
And they constantly, because they had to fill all this news space, they were constantly just standing outside Westminster reporting on whatever,
Anything.
And they would talk slower than most people because they had so much time to fill. They just had to keep going. And then there'd always be a pause. Tim Dowie, Sky News.
Yeah.
And we were like, who talks like that?
And all their inflection, all of them is the same. It's not like everyone has that. It's not just one that's like, Brian O'Donovan from RT News. He has the sort of Brian O'Donovan, RT News, Belfast. Whereas every single person on Sky News had the same one.
That's it, because Irish reporters all try to be different, I think.
They do.
You have, years ago, there was Tom O'Cochrane was always the man reporting up north. The windows were shattered after midnight and the old lady ran onto the street. It was that guy. And then you had Pascal Plastic Sheeting, as he's referred to.
Pascal Sheehy, RT News.
Yeah, so they're all very diverse. But then you're right.
Yeah.
Sky News was always the same tone. And I used to think that to be a Sky News reporter, in my stand-up bit, I had them all in a classroom. This is where you went to learn how to speak like a Sky News reporter. And it was always, remember, you have to be very enthusiastic and energetic and confident for the first half of your sentence.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the sentence, you can't be confident at all. So you have to go like, the first half of your sentence must be very confident. The second half isn't confident at all. Them days, Sky News. It's almost like they lose interest at the end. Back to the studio.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Sorry, one word before I know
Right.
it's such a random tangent to go on. Alva and I were watching the royal wedding, and like that, they keep the commentary going no matter what. And it's from the minute guests start arriving. And I remember Kay Burley was doing it, and some man arrived, and obviously they're just again filling the silence. And she goes, whatever his name was, say it's Tom. It's like, oh, Tom has arrived, and he's walking with his wife, Catherine. Tom has a cane since we've last seen him. Nonetheless, he's very welcome here. What? Alva and I were like, sorry.
Normally we'd stop them at the door. Hey, cripple, not so fast. I mean, you can't go fast. Like,
that is the most random way to fill time. And also, who are you to welcome them, Kay Burley? Like, it's not your wedding. Anyway, that's a random thought.
But look, I think it suits the topic of our conversation, which is creativity today, because you are one of the, if not the most creative person that I know. And I'm always fascinated by your career and what you do. And I liked that we spoke about your podcast because, you know, you mentioned the word passion when you spoke about that. And that just seems to be one of the things that drives you when looking in from the outside. We've been fortunate enough to work together on some things over the years. And you do seem just hugely passionate about being creative in whatever form that happens to come. Like, is creativity something that you're consciously aware of that you have to kind of nurture? Or are you just interested in lots of things and they just happen to be creative?
I actually did a brainstorm recently because I am always trying to challenge myself and figure out where I want to go. Because often when I'm working on something in the present moment, it's an idea from maybe a year or a year and a half ago, and I'm just executing it now. And so I always want to be thinking about what might be next. And in the brainstorming session, someone we both know, Niamh, was like to me, she was part of it. We were coming up with ideas, and she said, sometimes it can be very hard to know yourself. But from what I know of you, if you're not passionate about something or if you aren't buzzed from it creatively, you lose interest and you find it really difficult. So even though you might think you kind of slot into things and keep going, regardless of whether you're passionate about it or not, that's not what you're like. You're not driven by anything else but the fact that you might feel passionate about something and you are, flexing your creative muscles. So I think it's taken me actually a few years to kind of lean into the fact that I am creative in many ways. I kind of thought when I started out, okay, people are going to know me for these impressions that I do. So that was how it all started for me on Snapchat. Yeah. I did impressions of, Irish bloggers and influencers and celebrities. And I kind of panicked then because I went...
Which I'm going to demand you do in a few minutes.
No,
but go
of
on.
course. No, for you, Dermot, anything. And I kind of then panicked because I went, that's not necessarily what I want to do long term, but this is how people are seeing me now. So very quickly, I kind of started introducing my own personality to my social media. I kind of went, okay, yeah, I'll do the impressions, but I want people to know that I want to be in radio and I want to do maybe a bit of TV. And so I started sharing day to day my own, personality, my observations on things. And I was in radio at the time, but I hadn't got a full-time gig. I was doing the entertainment news for a Dublin station for Spin. And I kind of very early on said, okay, I want people to know that I can do a couple of different things. And luckily it worked out. And I kind of, the impressions helped radio because, the people in charge kind of went, oh, she has this cool thing that she can do for us on the station. And then in turn, being on radio helped my social media following. And I kind of, at the start, was afraid that I might be pigeonholed in one area. But as it's kind of moved and evolved, I've kind of surrounded myself with people who kind of go, no, you can do a couple of different things and you can do TV, you can juggle a few bits.
I used to struggle with that in that I would see people doing one thing really well. And I found that I was just someone who wanted to do a little bit of everything. It was like when you can't decide what to eat in the evening and you just want to put out we call it a platter of pickers, we call it at home. Yeah. Let's just have pickers, which is code for we're too lazy to make a decision. Yeah. And a lot of my career has been doing that, like stand up and quite similar to yours. Yes. And I even to this day, I'm not sure whether that's a fault or, an advantage. Is it a good or a bad thing to have lots of interests and do as much of those as you can?
Yeah.
Or should you drill down and do one thing? Because I don't think either of us are cut out for sticking to one thing.
And it's taken me a long time to kind of accept or realise I'm not cut out for just doing one. And that's okay. Because I think it's probably the jack of all trades, master of none thing that's in my head that goes, oh God, do I only do all these things because I'm too afraid to commit to one because I wouldn't actually be that good at it ultimately.
Yeah.
You know, but I think the world is changing, you know, with social media, with just media in general. I think I've accepted the fact that you can do a little bit of all of it. And it's okay if some of it is being nurtured, you know, 70% of your time while the others are only 30 altogether. And then that can ebb and flow. And it's about knowing when to give more attention to one and not so as much to the other. But ultimately, I don't want to decide. I am kind of enjoying having a bit of everything.
So you kind of follow the creative buzz, and wherever that leads you to, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, and I need gaps as well, I think. You know, even with the likes of The Laughs of Your Life, you know, when I look at, you know, the year of 2024, Dancing with the Stars is my project for January, February, March. And I've made a decision. I made the decision last year because it was my first year. I'm not going to do a whole lot else except my radio in the mornings and Dancing with the Stars at the weekends. And I thought maybe this year I would change my mind on that and go,
so you're
no,
just going to work the 80 hours a week.
just the 80 with the 4 hours sleep in the 7 days.
Wow, you're really slacking off. Like,
you need to pull up your socks.
You'll never make it in this town with an attitude like that.
But you know, I thought I might change my mind with that this year, but I haven't, because, you know, that's more than enough. And I can, and then I see, you know, The Laughs of Your Life, I'll do a season of that this year. And so I'll be excited for it again, you know, because it's a lot of work because I want it to be the best it can be. So I do a season of 12 episodes and give it everything and let it have a breather. And, you know, others' TV stuff will hopefully come up in this year. And if it doesn't, I'll focus on social media stuff and growing, you know, Instagram following and keeping those followers engaged and happy and, you know, enjoying what I'm doing.
Do you ever find it exhausting?
Yes. Big time.
You know, because you got a lot of plates spinning, you know, and you know, when you list out all the things that you're doing, that would make most people's minds boggle.
Yeah.
So how do you know when to say, do you know what, my creative buzz, you know, is my creative spidey sense is tingling, but actually I don't have time for that project and I'm going to have to say no for now. How do you know the times to say no? I'm
not that good at it generally. I don't know.
I noticed, by the way, you crawled in the door here and asked for a pillow.
No, do you know what? I come from a family where my parents, both of them, even though they're very different people and have different personalities, they are both get up and goers and doers, and they don't really feel sorry for us, myself and my sisters. You know, there's not a lot of sympathy in our house. You could have had a leg hanging off when we were sent into school. And that was kind of the way we were brought up. So there's, of course, you know, I'll feel minded by my mom when I need to. And if I need to ring her and have a vent or a cry, she'll be great. But then my dad will go, but you'll be grand and you can do it. You know, not in a harsh way, but in a, I know you're able for it. And sometimes that's all you need. And then other times I'll say, fuck off, I'm actually not, you know. Or there are times where I think, again, the older I get and the more I'm doing, the more selective I can be. But again, in Ireland, that can be hard because I think you can get into your own head and go, is being selective being seen as a diva? And I don't want to necessarily say no in case people will think less of me, rather than following my gut and knowing. Like there was a project last year that will absolutely go unnamed, that I did that I knew from the get-go I shouldn't do it and I wasn't that passionate about it and I said yes to it. And every day after that I regretted saying yes and I couldn't pull out of it. I couldn't, and I would never, you know, and once I've committed I would stick with it. Unless it was obviously detrimental to my health or mental well-being. But it was close. And it was a massive learning curve for me. And I said yes to please other people. I mean, it's why most people, I think, say yes to things that they know they shouldn't be doing. It's just to keep other people happy.
There's a sense of, what if the opportunity doesn't come again?
And that's a freelance life.
Yeah.
You know, because I am a freelancer essentially. So there is that fear always underneath it all. And but that's also why, that fear is also why I keep so many things going, so that I won't be left with nothing.
Yeah.
If one of them drops.
It's interesting that you talk about your family, because I think, we're all products of our upbringing. And, I've been lucky enough to meet your dad and your sisters. And when I see what they all do, they're all very entrepreneurial and creative and have this massive drive.
Yeah.
It seems to be part of the Garrihy makeup, is it?
Totally. I mean, my dad is one of 11. He's the third youngest. And I mean, of 11 of them, his eldest sister, Mady, emigrated. But all of the rest of them, in a time where it really wasn't easy, stayed in the west of Ireland and did anything and everything they could to stay there and to work there. And there is very much jack of all trades kind of trait in my dad's family, himself included. I mean, he was in construction for 26 years. And then obviously the country was, how would you describe it? Went up in flames.
Hit a blip
In, 2008 maybe.
Yeah.
And he kind of kept that going for 2 years when he maybe should have only kept it going for 1 year and then made the decision. But he went into voluntary liquidation, and that was a really tough time for them and for my family. But he, has this energy and this drive and work ethic, and he kind of took a bit of a breather, a really hard breather. It was not easy at all. And kind of reassessed and, came up with the idea for Dublin Bay Cruises off the back of him and his brothers running boats to the Aran Islands down in Doolin. He started that business on his own, and that's thriving 10 years on. And my mom's been by his side with both construction and with that. And yeah, it's always been, I mean, I remember at the time when he was really struggling coming up with the idea for a new business, someone close to him said, the only thing getting in the way of you and a new project or you and a new lease of life is your ego. To him at the time, that it was relevant to him then. He was just so afraid of what people would think, or the fact that it might fail.
Yeah, but plus your age comes into it. You think, do I have the energy and the confidence to actually see this one through? Are all my good creative years behind me?
Absolutely.
And that can be terrifying.
Totally.
Speaking as someone who's changed up their career quite recently, all those kinds of thoughts go through your head. You go, what if this idea was just really nice, but what if the actual doing is completely different?
Terrifying. But sometimes it's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. Sometimes you do have to just go for it. But sorry, yeah. So entrepreneurial genes are definitely there on my dad's side and my mom's side. And they I suppose they just raised the three of us to kind of feel.
And those genes are brought to you by Tesco F&F.
Of course.
Just got to get it in there.
Makes fashion sense. So yeah, I mean, we all kind of just had that. And I mean, we were very lucky as well that our parents, when we were in school, Avian wanted to act always. Alva was was and is the business head, but I wanted to do drama as well. And we were very much encouraged to do that. We were very lucky because there were people in my year, I remember, who wanted to study music, and their parents would say, no, you're doing teaching, or you're doing law, or whatever it might be. And we were always encouraged, if you're going to do something, yes, we'll support you, but you better do it to the best of your ability. Not in a pusher way, but in a, we know you're capable, so don't mess it up, basically. Just give it everything. And that was always a motto, I suppose, in our house. It was like, we don't mind what you're doing. We just want you to give it absolutely everything. And if you do, you'll be rewarded. In life, but also by us. We won't, like my mom, we were allowed to go to the teenage discos if we played our hockey match to the best of our ability on the Saturday morning. She's like, I'll bring you, I'll pick you up, I'll give you, we can get you an outfit on the way, as long as you give it everything and I know you've tried your best. So that was always kind of incentive driven upbringing, I think.
So I like it because it's, the little kernel of creativity is there, but you have all this work ethic wrapped around it. And I think certainly in the business that you're in, that's what you have to have, if you're going to keep going with the slog. And I wonder, following the creative buzz is exciting and all that, but do you think that there has to be an element of slog to it? I'm thinking of when I wrote my book, it's always, or at the beginning of any project, it's always like, oh, that sounds cool. That sounds like fun. But then there are times when you just have to sit down and do the work.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that part.
Yes.
The slog part of creativity, because I feel there has to be some slog involved.
Completely. And you're hitting your head against a wall, yeah. And going, and imposter syndrome. You're like, when did I ever think I was funny? How did I ever think that I'm a funny person? Did someone just tell me once I was funny and I just believed it forevermore? But yeah, I think definitely. And I find that sometimes it's hard with the breakfast show because that's something that every day is different. I mean, it's, as you know, from doing so many years of breakfast, I know in later years you weren't breakfast, but you did lots of years of breakfast radio. As it's very structured in many ways, but in other ways, it's so new every day, because you have the benchmarks that might be the same every morning, but you have to have the fresh content every day. And when comedy comes into that can be tough and that can be a lot of pressure. And you see it with the likes of Mario. I mean, what he's done for 40 years is just unbelievable. Something could happen at 5 o'clock on a Thursday in the Dáil and he has it on Gift Grub the next morning. That's a level that I'm like, I always admire massively. But yeah, that can be a real stress trying to constantly come up with fresh content for that. And social media as well. You want to show that you have your finger on the pulse and that you know what's going on in the world. Because I think Irish audiences can very quickly go like, why am I following this person when they don't have a clue what's actually going on?
Yeah. And do you find that social media, I mean, obviously, that's where, as you said, that's where you started, you grew out of that and people noticed you there.
Yeah.
Do you ever wish you could just turn it off and go, I am so sick of posting things?
It's funny, I definitely had times of that in my 20s or when I was, when I was younger, like when I was 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I did when I was like single or if I just wanted to have a night with my friends. Like it all happened for me relatively young. Like I was 24. So I was single. I still wanted to meet someone. And I kind of got to that weird territory of like, oh God, like I can't actually talk to someone because my Snapchat overnight, it was like 90,000 followers. So like, I can't just chat to someone at a bar without the fear of someone taking a photo or like, and that's weird for them. It's weird for me. So there were times kind of when I was on my own that I kind of went, oh, why did I invite this into my life? I can't actually have, because I feel very normal. My friends are very normal. My school friends I've been friends with for years. It all feels very normal, but the people in the club aren't actually normal. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of a fear. So I think when I was younger, I definitely wanted times to just switch it off and never post again. But I've really, in the past year or so, and I think that comes with happiness and contentment. It doesn't feel like a slog because I also don't do it unless I feel like it. I could go 24 hours without posting, which probably to some people is like, well done you, 24 hours. But actually, when people are watching all that you're doing and enjoying following you, it is a long time to go without posting. I enjoy it. And because I have a lot going on, I have the breakfast show, I have clips to post from the podcast, I have, my outfits, my makeup, things that people are interested in. It doesn't feel like work a lot of the time at the moment. That's not to say it could change.
Yeah.
Because it can be very fickle.
Well, because I look at, just talking about the slog part, I mean, as you mentioned, Dancing with the Stars,
Yes.
So that is such a beast of a show. And any time in the years in radio where I've interviewed people, it's like they've come back from Nam,
I know.
completely shell-shocked and like, what just happened?
I know.
I thought I was doing a rinka, for an hour a day. And now it was like Hell Week on steroids.
Genuinely. It's massive. I mean, as a presenter, we have a very different experience, myself and Jen. But for the people involved, it's, Carl last year, I don't know how he did it. And he had a baby, and he gave it absolutely everything and it paid off. He won. But
he had a baby outside the show. He didn't give it that's commitment. Your dad would be proud of that one. You gave it 110%. You even conceived a child.
You popped out a glitter ball child.
Yeah.
But he was on the breakfast show Monday to Friday, training all day, rehearsals for the show all day Saturday, and doing it on Sunday for 12 weeks and won it. Like, my hat, even Donica was like, I've never seen anything like it. His drive is just phenomenal. But so for me, it wasn't as intense. It was still intense, but it was, you know, I was Monday to Friday on radio, rehearsals on Saturday, and then you're there all day Sunday. And yeah, I mean, you know what live TV is like. It's afterwards, you're absolutely buzzing. It's very hard to come down from the high of it, but then you're shattered the next day, like absolutely shattered. The adrenaline. I can't even remember what the question was. Was it to do with slog?
Yeah, it was just that what that beast is like.
Yeah,
you know?
Huge. And you know, for me, getting the job was a bit like that. Getting the job was such a thrill, and then being like, I have to do it now in January and do the show and go live. That was very scary.
Yeah.
But I mean, we couldn't have been more prepped. Shin and Will, who produced the show, they're absolutely amazing, and I felt very minded from the get-go, and it was very much like, you are here for a reason. You're well able for this. I mean, if someone had told me I was going to have to wear a nude coloured swimsuit for the opening dance number, I wouldn't have taken the job. They told me this the day before. I was like, no, this is hell. This is absolute hell. But no, it was fine. Got the spray tan on.
That's what I wore at my wedding. Absolutely took my idea. You bitch. Standing at the altar waiting for my wife to come up in a nude swimsuit.
Bitch stole my look.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was daunting, and obviously the presenting was, you know, scary once you come down those stairs in the heels. And I
think with creativity, it tends to follow that pattern where there's the dreaming stage where you're kind of dreaming stuff up. You know,
yes.
Wouldn't it be cool if?
Yeah.
And then you have your, oh my God, that's a great idea, excitement buzz.
Yeah.
And then you go, let's do it. And then there's that thing of, oh my God, I actually have to do this now.
Yes.
And that's where all the self-doubt lives and all the, you know, second guessing yourself and
totally
imposter syndrome and all that stuff. And then it comes to completion mode.
Yeah.
And then you go, I did it. And then you have that satisfaction.
Absolutely.
And that fuels it, the next thing.
The desire again.
Yeah.
And when you're in the kind of scary imposter mode, you can get into a mode of, I'm never doing this again. But once you complete it, and Mark, actually, because, you know, my fiancé.
Yeah, I was going to get to that because you talked about being in a happy place and all that.
Yes,
you know.
But he's creative as well. He's a comic and comedian. And he had something similar recently with the project where he really wanted to get it across the line. He signed a contract. And then for about a day or two, he didn't really talk about it. And I was like, what's the story with that? And he was like, yeah, I have to start working on it. And I could tell by him, he was in that stage of like, oh God, the buzz of getting it across the line is gone. I have to do the thing. And I kind of had that conversation with him of like, you're well able for, like, you got this for a reason and it's happened for a reason, you know. And I hate to be a nag if I am being a nag, but like, you can do this. You need to sit down and actually apply yourself now and get it done and make it brilliant. So yeah, I think every creative...
turned into your father. Give it everything you've got. You're not going to the disco. I'll drive you there. I'll pick you up.
You won't get a new outfit. But I think every creative, no matter what kind of creativity you have, feels that.
Is it nice? Do you mind talking about your engagement?
Absolutely not. I'd love to.
Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
I saw it pop up in your social media and I was just so excited for you.
Thank you. I will talk about it with anyone. I will milk it for as long as possible.
Is it nice to be in a relationship with another person closely aligned to your work, who gets your pressures, who gets what it's like to stand up on a stage and do stuff?
Absolutely. I never could have anticipated it being the way it is. I kind of thought, you know, times where I would be on my own and think about what would be a good match for me. I kind of thought someone in an opposite career, because I go, you know, I'll come home from my creative job and they'll come home from their office job and our worlds will collide in a romantic way, but we won't talk work. You know, that was what I kind of dreamt up. Of course, it never happens the way you think it might happen. And it's actually in a gorgeous way. Like, he is so supportive. He's just so supportive. He's such a champion. And Donica always said that as well. You know, you need someone who's going to be a champion and is going to understand it and have your back. And yeah, it's a massive bonus to be able to talk to him about my fears and the imposter moments. And he does the same with me. And I think we're a great fit in that way.
How did you meet?
We met via his cousin, who works in 2FM as a producer. But officially we kind of met via Instagram, because he had a couple of comedy gigs and his cousin was going to them. And I was like, who? So John is his name. And I was like, who? He was like, I'm going to my cousin's gig. I said, who's your cousin? He said, Mark Megan. And his name rang a bell because he did viral videos kind of a couple of years ago on Facebook. I was like, he's that good looking, funny guy. I might give him an Instagram follow. So I followed him on Instagram. He followed me back and the rest is history. It was a mad start. It was kind of like, is it not? Is it not? But yeah, a year later, like, I mean, I knew very, very early on. So we met at the start of October 2022. On mid-November that year, my sisters and I went for a sister night, kind of Christmas night.
Yeah.
And after a few wines, I was like, if he doesn't tell me he loves me by Christmas, I'm going to tell him. Avon was like, oh my God, do it. Alba was like, don't fucking do it. It was like...
I thought you were going to say he's dumped. I was like, oh my God, that's a lot of pressure right there.
I was like, I don't care. I've loved him from the moment I met him. And I know he loves me too. So if he doesn't say it, I'll say it. Aidan was like, that is so romantic. Alba was like, if you do that. Like, they're just completely different.
But I remember that feeling with Karina. That, and we realised when we spoke about it later that we'd only known each other a couple of months. And she had been away for a long time in Cuba by herself.
Okay.
And when she came home, we spent a night together, and later on we realised that both of us that day wanted to tell each other that we loved each other. And we both chickened out.
Yeah.
So
it's terrifying.
And so what happened? He
told me way before Christmas. And asked me to be his girlfriend.
Did you get a little text from one of your sisters saying, if I were you, I'd say these three words?
Oh my God, I've never thought, I hope that didn't happen. Oh my God. No, I mean, I knew as soon as I met him that he was the one.
Before that, did you ever
feel that?
Did you wonder what is it like to know? You know,
totally.
Did you ever ask, like, how do you know they're the one? How do you know?
Yeah.
And you just know. And if you don't just know, that seems like someone's talking another language to you.
Yeah.
You know?
I just thought it wasn't really for me. I kind of was like, because I was in a very lucky, well, I say lucky, but I had worked really hard and I got to a position where I'd bought a house myself. Stone's throw from my parents. I was like, actually, our producer in 2FM, Grace, she's very funny. She met her now husband around the same age as I did. And he jokes, he's like, she was about 10 days away from having 9 cats as her life. And we met. And I kind of thought, like, I had made peace though. I was like, I just can't be dealing with the effort of it. I'll live near mom and dad. Very proud to have bought my own house. I have Bertie, my main man, my dog. And I just want to focus on work. I'm so lucky to enjoy my work and want to throw myself into it, which is what I was doing. But then again, the total cliche that you hear, like, it's when you're it's when you're not looking for it and you actually are content with what you're doing or where you're at, that it can happen. And he was a year sober. He's in recovery. And I mean, they say with the program he does, they say, try your best not to get into a romantic relationship for about a year. Just figure yourself out and figure it all out and follow the program and see how you go. And we met like a week after he was a year sober. And I really believe, I've never been a believer in whatever, the universe, but I think we met at that time for a reason.
It's so beautiful. Can I be in the rom-com? No, it's not cringe.
You can be the pastor.
Yes, the comic relief pastor.
The semi-creepy pastor.
But that is, that's life. That's what you've experienced. And I mean, with these things, all you can do is just be grateful for how special it feels. You know?
Totally. And I never anticipated the kind of contentment. And even when, some people were asking me when we got engaged, like, what does it feel like? And I was like, obviously it's a massive cherry on top of an amazing thing. But really the commitment is way before that. Like, he had moved out of his apartment in Dunleary, given it up to rent to someone else for at least a year. He's a total Southside person. He's born and reared on the Southside. His mom's in Docky. His dad is in Blackrock. Loves the sea, lived by the sea. That was a massive, thing for him in recovery as well. His pier walks, meditation. So like the commitment of coming to Castleknock because, I had the house there and my point is the commitment happens long before the engagement happens. You know, it feels very, the engagement is just this lovely, sparkly, literally thing. But it's before that, it happens way before that. It's like, it feels very calm and sure.
It's very sparkly and very big. I noticed when you came in that your left arm was like just dragging along the floor with the weight of it.
I'm going to damage
The rock.
It's beautiful. The boy did
It
good.
is. Wow. He's definitely a keeper.
Thank you.
Do you find it's having that security now and that feeling of warmth and you know, that love that you have at home?
Yeah.
Does that inspire you to do more things? Is it an easier place to think, to be creative from, do you think, having that there? Or do, you know, sometimes creatives need edginess, or they need to be hungover, or they need to be exhausted, or, you know.
No, there's a bit of both. Like, it inspires me because I have such a lovely support in him. It inspires me to believe in myself a bit more, and he's an amazing person to bounce ideas off. Often I'd, you know, do a sketch on the breakfast show, usually on a Thursday, and by Wednesday night at 9 I haven't written anything, and he'll go, let's sit in the couch and thrash it out, and he'll help. And some of the funniest stuff I've done, like, he's the least likely person to understand the character of Dáithí O'Shea, and he comes up with the best stuff when I do it, because he's total South Dublin guy. So in ways, the Dáithí.
Yeah, he doesn't speak fluent Dáithí. But he still manages to get by.
But when he tries to do like a country accent, I cringe beyond belief, because I'm like, Mark, don't. Like, you can't. You don't have enough info to go there. But then he comes up, you know. Anyway, sorry, he's a great support in that way. But then in other ways, I think because I've probably gotten better at wanting to nurture my downtime, because it's with someone who I want to be with. You know what I mean? Whereas before, I didn't really value downtime, where like...
It's just you and the 9 cats.
And Bertie. And a Magnum ice cream. And tears. And fear. And texts to Donegal and Carl. They joke about that like when I was single, they were like, you kept WhatsApping us at the weekend, and like, hey guys, what's up? Like, hey, want to hang out? We're like, no, we've literally a wife and kids. Leave us alone till Monday morning at 6. What are you doing? Like, why are you asking? But yeah, so I definitely want to nurture and mind and enjoy downtime a lot more. So yeah, I think that answers the question.
Getting back to your impressions.
Yes.
What are your favourites to do? Because I think every impressionist has favourites. You know, mine would always be Diarmuid Gavin. I just love doing his voice, because I like the way that it makes my throat feel. And because when I speak it like that, I can see him in my head. Really, I just see him there. It's just in my consciousness.
I love the way you really enjoyed hearing yourself. Yeah. I love when that happens. When you do an impression and you hear it come out of your mouth and you're like, that was really good.
Yeah. Although sometimes you can hear an impression perfectly in your head.
Yes.
And then when you go to speak it, it's like, I was trying to do Donald Trump for my kids last night, and it was, you know, went beyond unfunny into just embarrassing. So I had to just leave the room. But because what was in my head wouldn't come out. It was
no.
Like, I'm Donald Trump. I was like, no, you're not. Go to bed.
Daddy's getting old, kids.
Yeah.
It actually changes all the time. Una Healy I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Because it's sort... oh God, I brained it. Oh no. It's a sort of like, well, it's kind of at the front of the mouth, and it's sort of like a little bit of kind of like that, and it's down and tip, and yeah, the kids are great, and it was the Christmas now, we'll be doing the panto, and it's sort of, I don't know, again, a bit like yourself, Dermot. It's a bit like kind of like the way it makes my throat feel. It's kind of a softness to it, and it's the kind of, yeah, I mean, it's quick, and it kind of keeps moving, and we don't really think about things too much. We kind of just get the answer out, and that'll be it then.
Have you spoken to her about your impression? Have you got to do it to her?
I haven't, to her face, actually. But she's always lovely when I meet her, so I think she enjoys it. Because some people don't.
Yeah, well, how Roz Purcell is one of my favourites.
Guys! No! Please! Oh, I do it. She's such a good sport. Roz told me before sometimes she gets texts. When I do a sketch of Roz on the breakfast show, her family text her and say, "What are you doing on radio?" And I'm like, "It's Doireann." So yeah, she's always a great sport.
Dahi.
Dahi has kind of taken on a life of his own. That happens sometimes. With some impressions, it's like I feel like I get the voice down. With others, it's like I hone in on a part of their character and kind of amp it up. You know, like with Mario, when he does the Miriam genuinely. Like, I don't even know if she's even said it, but it's become a thing now in its own right. It's a parody thing. Dahi has kind of taken on a life of his own. He's sort of, I don't even know if it sounds like him anymore, but it's kind of the inflection at the end of the words. And it's a kind of... he enjoys riding donkeys in the nip.
What I love about Dahi is that if you watch him on TV, he's probably... It always seems like he's 60% engaged with the gig, and then the other half is off doing.
Do you mean 40%?
What? Yeah, sorry.
The other half.
Sorry, pass maths. Actually, I did honours. I have no excuse. The other 40% is off just imagining great things in his mind. You know, and that's where the twinkle comes from. Completely.
He says,
"There are 2 times of the year that my phone lights up. After the Rose of Three, and when Darren's taking the piss out of me."
Like, yes. I love that people text him to be like, "Darren just did this." So yeah, he's a great sport.
Yeah. Are there any other ones that you...
Well, there's Mary Lou McDonald.
And who you spoke to recently.
If you could just let me... if you could just let me finish my point, Dermot. I had her on the podcast recently, and she very much came in and dressed me down from the get-go because I hadn't done the impression of her to her face immediately, which she had been waiting for. She kind of lets herself run out of breath at the end of the sentences. So she's a great sport. And there's a couple of others. Do you think
sometimes politicians want to sort of be seen...
to be cool?
As, you know, do the impression of me because I'm just a regular guy or gal.
Definitely.
You know, I can take a slagging.
They love it. Yeah. I do think they enjoy that. And you see some of them pop up on, I mean, I've had Mary Lou, I've had Miel Martin, Simon Harris, Michael Healy-Rae. I definitely think there's an advisor in the background with each of them going, "Go on the young person podcast."
Yeah. Here's the pie chart of all the demographics that we're intersecting. Yeah.
I mean, I'm very grateful to the advisors. It's like they've been great episodes. And it has, I mean, that is the beauty of the podcast as well. It kind of shows there's a human side to these people.
How important is the podcast for you in terms of it's your thing? Because, you know, obviously TV, you know, is great fun and all, but someone else is doing it, and you know they're ball pulling the strings. Radio is the same.
Yeah.
It's like fast TV.
Yeah, basically.
But the podcast thing is something that you dreamed up yourself.
Yeah.
And you get to make it.
Yeah.
And you get to have final say.
Which I love.
Yeah.
I really love.
I think that's really unique for creative people these days. And I think it's such a blessing. And you can see that big organizations are struggling to go, hang on a sec, what? We have to give the presenter how much? You know, because it just doesn't compute with the old sort of big record company way of thinking, or, you know, big production company or big TV channel or whatever it happens to be.
Totally.
The power stays most of the time with the presenter and the person who dreamed it up.
Yeah.
So I think for creative people, it's a massive space to have.
Yeah. I'm really proud of the way I suppose executed that, in that I came up with the idea and I knew I was going to be starting small with it. You know, I got in touch with someone I know who runs a studio, asked him, could I do a pilot? He said, yes, love the idea. He was branching into podcasting anyway. And I did a pilot episode and I presented that to potential sponsors. And I was offered a sponsorship for season 1 and I was like, it's it's actually worth more than that. I know it is. So I said no. And I didn't have a sponsor then until season 5. So I just funded it for the first 4 seasons because I knew I could grow it to a point where it was worth more if I could just get the traction of, if I could get brilliant guests and stick with the format and really bed in the format in the listeners' minds. And so they'd know exactly what to expect every week, from different guests, from totally different walks of life. That's a really important thing for me as well. Every season I love to have a mix of, obviously, of course, everyone wants the big names, but also smaller creators or just people who I think are brilliant but maybe aren't that well known. And I just can't believe the success of it. And I mean, I started it before I ever got into RT. So my first season was the beginning of March 2019. And I didn't start in 2FM till June of that year. So I had the first season out of the way, which in a way was great because I don't think they would have stopped me. But in my own mind, I was able to go, well, that was my project before I ever came here. So the success of it, I kind of feel is mine.
Yeah, of course.
And
is it hard to work where you work and have this outside business? It's
not hard. At times it can seem like it's a juggle and potentially a struggle. But
do people go, hey, she's doing all this other stuff on Instagram and, taxpayers are paying her wages there on the radio.
Yeah, there has been that. Yeah.
Is that hard to deal with? Because for me, I think it's ridiculous because that's who you were. You got that job because of the business and profile and talents that you had developed over years.
Yeah.
So why would you suddenly throw a match on it?
I wouldn't and I won't. And I think the majority of people understand it. And they see I'm more than entitled to nurture as many projects as I want. And yes, I am on the national broadcaster. That's only part of my work. It's actually a small part of it in the grand scheme of things. I have The Laughs of Your Life. Doireann and Friends is a new podcast I started this year that I'm going to bring back again next year. All of the social media stuff I do, emceeing different gigs, and I love doing that. I mean, the corporate stuff is great crack. I'm sure you know that as well. When you get to MC a staff night and they're buzzers, and I love all of that stuff. And I love, because you're meeting people who follow you on social media as well. And I get such a buzz out of that.
Although a few years ago I was emceeing a Christmas party in some essentially a smoking area and of a pub, and I was standing in the DJ box with a mic that worked sometimes.
Is there anything worse?
Buddy, dude, games, and we're gonna full. And then I was like, do you know what? I am never doing one of these ever again.
Really?
Well, no one cared. Nobody wanted to listen to me. People just were like, I was like, why am I here? Just let them have their party. Yeah. I don't need to be part of it. Yeah.
But I mean, they all help each other. And I'm not going to act like being on 2FM Breakfast doesn't help other parts of my work. Of course it does. And being on Dancing with the Stars has I really noticed in the past couple of months, in the supermarket, it's the young kids and the grannies who notice me as well. Whereas before it was probably the demographic of Instagram, the people in their 20s and 30s who would say, hey, I follow you on Instagram. Whereas it's brought this whole new audience my way, which is amazing. But there's no reason why I can't juggle it all. And people acting like there should be a reason, I don't really understand.
If you are juggling lots of things and your mind is feeling full, what do you do? What's your go-to thing to clear the head, to create some space, feel less busy?
I'm right beside the Phoenix Park, and it's funny because like most things, in teenage years you can fall out of love with something so basically I grew up beside the Phoenix Park. We learned to cycle there. It's where we went for big walks when we were kids. The zoo is there, all that stuff. And then for probably 10 years of my life, I just ignored the park. I just didn't think of it as a thing. And then lockdown hit and it was a complete saving grace. Well within the 5K, the big walks, in all seasons. And even walking parts of the park I'd never walked before, I just fell so much more in love with it again. And so now living right beside it in the house that I bought rather than just my parents' house, I love nothing more than on a Saturday morning. I'm very lucky because even though I get up at the crack of dawn for the breakfast show, at weekends I'm able to sleep I think it's just pure exhaustion. My body's like, oh no, we won't be waking at 5. We'll be sleeping till 10.
But thankfully, you're also engaged to a stand-up comic who probably didn't get home till 3 a.m. as well.
There you go.
So
yeah.
happy days.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
you don't want is to be like, I just finished work at 2 a.m. and the person beside you is like, chipper, it's 6. Come on, we're hiking. And the relationship over.
Yeah. So it's
Were you nervous about? Everyone has different opinions, but being with someone who didn't drink alcohol, for some people that's nothing. For some people it's actually lovely because you think he's never going to be falling in the door at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, but for some people go, I don't think I could be with someone who didn't drink.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
I need someone to share that experience with. Was that an issue for you?
I mean, when we met, like our first couple of dates were walks. And actually, I'd almost recommend it, not in a preachy way, but, you know, I've definitely been in situations in the past where, you know, I would be on the dating scene, right? And the first 3, 4, 5, 6 dates involves drinks.
Yeah.
And then you do the sober date. And you're like, oh God, this isn't actually anything I thought it was. Because things feel way heightened, way better crack when you've had a few drinks. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking for a relationship or you're at the stage in your life where you think you might, you know, want to meet someone that's a long-term thing, go on a couple of just walks. Because that's what we did, obviously. The first couple of days, we just went for walks, and it just, from the get-go, I knew exactly who he was. He knew exactly who I was. And it just helped massively. And I mean, he's very open about his recovery. And, you know, he would say to me at the get-go, when we kind of both acknowledged, okay, this is something that we want long-term, you know, he explained to me about the program he follows, and he was like, it's one day at a time. And, you know, if he were to think too far in advance and think to himself, oh God, if Doireann and I end up together, and if we go on honeymoon, and if we go out in a boat on a beautiful day, and she's having a glass of rosé and I can't have that. If I thought about that too much, it'd be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You have to think about each day and wake up each morning, and he does his gratitude lists, and he goes to meetings, and he practices the steps. And I've learned so much from him about that. And it's, you know, it's so much more part of Irish life and Irish families than I ever could have realised before. And it affects everyone. You know, whether directly or indirectly. I think everyone knows someone who follows a program and is in recovery and is every day, you know, practicing how to live a life of sobriety. And so I've never really thought about it long term. Maybe I should, but it doesn't feel necessary because he's in a very good place with it. And
my dad dealt with that.
Really, yeah.
And he drank for a relatively short space of time for like probably 5 or 6 years in his life, and kind of late 30s, early 40s. But it wasn't good. And I was very young at the time, so I don't have a lot of memories of it. But the only thought or the only feelings I ever had towards him about that in later years was like, I was really proud of him.
Yeah.
You know, for being presented with that and dealing with it and moving on and providing a safe home and, you know, and security for all of us. Like, I was just so impressed and proud.
Yeah.
And anyone who sits down with their own addiction and goes, okay, let's see what we can do here.
Yeah.
I'm so impressed by that, you know.
And I'm the same, you know. I'm blown away by him and his strength and daily, just the way he daily deals with it. And it's funny how it shows up as well. It's not necessarily a Saturday night when everyone else is out drinking that he finds hard. It could be sometimes, but it's not always. It could be a Tuesday afternoon where it just all feels too much and it feels like this massive thing. Why do I have to deal with this and you don't, or everyone else doesn't? But again, the program he follows and the people he stays in touch with, I've nothing but admiration because it could be, especially at his age. You know, he went into recovery at 30, and I think it could be very easy to. I could be wrong, you know, but you could go, I'll give another 5 years. Like when I'm a bit older, I'll deal with this. Whereas he was just like, I couldn't do anymore.
Done. Yeah.
Totally, I'm done. And you have to, I think you have to reach that stage of, I'm absolutely done
Yeah.
in order to recover. I'm absolutely no expert, but just from looking on.
So finally,
Yes.
creatively, if you could wave a magic wand, is there anything that you would just love to do, or a place you would love to go, or people you'd like to work with, or?
Ooh. Oh God, I feel very lucky that, you know, live TV was something I really wanted to crack last year. And I feel like it went very well with the first season of Dancing with the Stars. I mean, season 2 remains to fully be seen. I'd love to do more live TV, definitely. I mean, the Shiny Floor shows are great crack.
Yes, I'm still waiting for the call for Doireann and Dermot's big night in.
I thought
which
we smashed that.
We nailed it. It was a one-off Christmas event, Shiny Floor, comedy, and there were so many conversations about it. I think this is going to be a thing. This is going to continue. Still waiting for that phone to ring.
Oh God. Do you know what?
But look, you've moved on. It's fine. I've come to terms.
We had so much to contend with that night because it was COVID. People had the masks on in the audience, obviously.
Yeah.
They were allowed whatever amount of people with masks on. But you remember there was a storm as well.
Yeah.
So half the audience couldn't come. We were like, oh, perfect. There's literally no buzz in this
So
room.
like every time they pan the camera around to the audience, they either had to whip pan it so it looked like there was more people, or else they just had to keep getting, okay, now all you lot move down to this section.
We good fun.
Thank you so much for chatting to me today. It's been just really lovely, and I wish you so much good fortune and happiness in your engagement and marriage whenever that happens, and of course your sparkling career.
Thank you so much, Dermot, for having me on the Mindful Podcast. On the Mindful Podcast.
You're very welcome, and I'm delighted you came. I really am. Give us a bit of Roz before you go.
Oh, Dermot, thank you so much for having me. And I hope you have so many more nice guests, but no one as nice as me.